I still remember the exact moment my world shattered, the way he looked at me across the dinner table, barely able to contain his smirk as he twirled his wine glass between his fingers. I had cooked his favorite meal that night, thinking we were celebrating something special, but I had no idea the only person celebrating would be him. "I'm trading you in for a younger model," he said casually, as if he were upgrading a car or swapping out an old phone. At first I thought he was joking, but then he leaned back in his chair, that smug expression still plastered on his face, and my stomach twisted into knots. "You're serious?" I whispered, feeling the ground shift beneath me completely. "She's 25, gorgeous, and everything I need. You've served your purpose," he said with a shrug. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "How do you process something like that? How do you sit there and watch the person you built a life with, the man you sacrificed for, look at you like you're an expired product on a shelf?" But what made it worse, what made my blood turn to ice, was when he leaned in and said, "And just so you know, I already emptied our joint account. The house, it's in my name, the car mine. I made sure you'd have nothing. Let's see how well you do without me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw that glass of wine right in his face, but I didn't. I just sat there, my hands clenched under the table, my nails digging into my palms so hard I thought they might draw blood, because what he didn't know was that I had a secret weapon of my own. For days I let him think he had one. I played the role of the devastated wife, packing my bag slowly, my hands trembling just enough to make him feel satisfied. He didn't even try to hide his texts from her anymore, laughing at his phone, leaving his credit card statements in plain sight, restaurant bills, hotels, shopping sprees that I knew weren't for me. He had become sloppy, overconfident, and that was his first mistake. His second mistake, underestimating me. You see, while he was off parading his new model around, I was quietly setting my plan in motion. It took a few calls, a few meetings with the right people, lawyers, financial advisors, a private investigator I had on speed dial. Within hours of his announcement, the best part, he had no idea. The day I walked out, he didn't even say goodbye. He barely looked up from his phone as I rolled my suitcase through the door. "Don't come crying back when you realize you can't survive without me," he muttered, not even bothering to glance my away. I didn't reply. I just stepped out, my heart pounding, but not with fear, with anticipation, because what he didn't know was that he had already lost everything. I walked out of that house a broke woman, but I knew without a doubt I wouldn't stay that way for long. I stepped out of the house without looking back, but inside I was smiling, not because I was free, not yet, but because I knew something he didn't. My so-called husband thought he had outplayed me, stripping me of everything, leaving me with nothing but the clothes on my back. He thought I would crumble, that I would beg, that I would regret not fighting for him. He had no idea that the game had only just begun. For the first few weeks I let him believe he had won. I let him think I was struggling, barely getting by. Meanwhile I was working in silence, watching everything unfold exactly as I had planned. What he didn't know was that the house might have been in his name, but the land it sat on, that was a different story. I had bought it years ago, before we were even married, and I never added his name to it. That meant while he could own the house, he was now about to be served an eviction notice for the land. It stood on a little legal loophole I had been advised about months ago. Back when I started seeing the signs of his wandering eyes, I had prepared for this moment long before he even had the courage to say the words. The first time I saw his face, when he received the legal notice, I knew the fun was about to begin. He stormed into my apartment, the same one he assumed I could never afford, slamming the papers on the table, his face red with fury. "What the hell is this?" he barked. I took my time sipping my coffee, my fingers scrolling lazily through my phone. "Looks like you're being evicted," I said, finally meeting his eyes. He looked ready to explode. "You can't do this. That's my house." I shrugged, feigning sympathy. "Your house, my land, and legally I can have that land cleared anytime I want, so unless you plan on living in a tent, you might want to start packing. I could see the exact moment it hit him, the realization that he wasn't the mastermind he thought he was, that I wasn't the weak, naive woman he had underestimated, that despite all his plans he was standing in front of me, completely powerless. But that was just the beginning. I had done my research and I knew all about his finances, the money he had siphoned from our accounts, the shady deals, the credit cards he had opened in my name, thinking I'd never find out. What he didn't know was that I had already frozen every account linked to my name, flagged the fraudulent activity, and sent his entire financial history to the IRS for a little surprise audit the day his accounts were locked, and he realized he had no access to his stolen money was the day he called me. For the first time in months, his voice wasn't cocky this time. It wasn't filled with arrogance or amusement. It was shaking. Listen, he started, trying to keep his composure. I think there's been a mistake. My accounts? Oh, I interrupted. You mean my accounts, the ones you drained thinking I wouldn't notice? He went silent. I smiled. Yeah, about that. You might want to check your mail. I hear the IRS is very interested in talking to you. His curses echoed through the phone, but I had already hung up by the time I saw him again. He wasn't the same man who had smirked at me over dinner. He wasn't the same man who had sneered when he told me he was trading me in for a younger model. He was a man who had lost everything: his house, his money, his new model, who had left the second she realized his credit cards didn't work anymore. He was broke, desperate, and standing in front of me like a man who had just realized he was never the predator he had always been, the prey. I made a mistake, he muttered, looking at the floor like a scolded child. I was an idiot. OT, I didn't mean what I said. I cut him off, stepping forward. Let me ask you something. When you told me I was replaceable, that you had found someone better, that you had taken everything and left me with nothing, did you mean it? His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He had no words left, no excuses, no lies that could fix what he had done. I leaned in, lowering my voice so he would never forget what I said next, because I meant everything I did to you. And with that I walked away, because the truth was I never needed revenge. Karma had already handled it for me.